All right, what's up, everybody? We are back, and LA just might turn their city around. I'm hoping so. Tonight is election night. I'm here with you guys, and the most interesting race we got running here in California is the LA mayor's race, where Spencer Pratt is looking like he's got a pretty good chance to take this thing out of the primary and take it to Karen Bass in the general. It's about 10:30 right now Pacific time, and according to NBC, who's got the most up-to-date numbers with about half the vote in, Karen Bass is sitting at 36%, Spencer Pratt at 29.5, and Rahman is at 20%. She's the socialist. Karen Bass and Rahman are both socialists, but Rahman actually admits to being a socialist. Karen Bass, I don't know if she's even really actually smart enough to have a real political philosophy that you could call socialism, but whatever. We can call her a socialist. She falls in that category. But Spencer Pratt is the interesting guy here. He's the dark horse candidate. He's the one who is trying to be the first Republican mayor of LA in 25 years. He's an interesting dude. The whole reason he's running is because his house burned down in the Palisades fire, which was a fire that was completely preventable. If you guys remember, it happened in January 7th, 2025. And since then, so it's been about a year and a half, no houses have been rebuilt. So that tells you why these people are so angry. Is Malibu that burned down, almost all Pacific Palisades was gone. The fire, we were sold in the beginning that this whole thing was about climate change and that, this all could have been preventable if we all would have just given Gavin Newsom more money, he could have changed the weather. When actually, it turns out the fire was arson, started by a communist, a 29-year-old named Rinderknecht, of course. We had a whole manifesto where he was ranting about, living Luigi Mangione, and he loved the murder of the United Healthcare CEO. However you feel about that, you shouldn't really idolize murderers, no matter how you feel about our healthcare system here. But this guy, I mean, he ranted and raved against capitalism, and he was a big fan of vigilantism. Although he killed 12 innocent people in this fire. And then with an investigation that they did where they were interviewing him, he said that he did it out of resentment of the rich and saying they were enjoying their money as we're all basically being enslaved by them. So standard communist shit. I mean, he could run for California Democratic Party chair with philosophies like that. But Spencer Pratt is really mad at Karen Bass because she's the mayor of LA. And again, this fire was preventable. And just to tell you how preventable it was and how not a secret this whole problem was, 6 months before the Palisades fire, State Farm refused to renew 70% of their fire policies in Pacific Palisades because apparently it was pretty clear this place was a tinderbox that was about to go up, which is playing into a lot of the problems they're having there rebuilding now. Is a lot of these people were underinsured or didn't have any. I shouldn't say they didn't have any insurance. Anyone with a mortgage these days is required to have insurance, but a lot of these people probably owned their houses free and clear and were free to not have insurance if they didn't want to. And it seems like a lot of them didn't. So what you've got is all these people who can't get paid out by their insurance. Those that are getting paid out aren't getting paid out enough. The richest people have just kind of walked away from their property and left. California passed a law, actually, or Gavin Newsom used his regulatory powers somehow. California's got this rule now for the Pacific Palisades where nobody can come in and make an offer on a property that was less than its last appraised value, which is insane. So there used to be a house on a property, and let's say it was 2 million bucks. And then that was with this big beautiful house on it. Then it burns down, the whole neighborhood burns down, all the amenity, everything burns down. You're not allowed to go make an offer on that property for less than 2 million bucks if that was its last appraised value. And they say that's to stop speculators from coming in and buy, but really that's all just because the government is going to buy it up in whole and build a shit ton of affordable housing on it and turn one of LA's richest, ritziest neighborhoods into a giant affordable housing complex. That's really what's going to happen, and that's the whole plan behind this thing. And you can tell because again, a year and a half later, no new houses have been built. The place still looks like a bomb went off. If this were any other self-respecting country, these houses would be, a ton would be rebuilt already. Again, you can build a house in a year and a half, even a nice one. A lot of them would be rebuilt. A lot of them would be half built, or they would be sold off to people who want to build luxury condos, etc. But we don't live in a normal country. This is California after all, and even worse, it's LA. So, of course, nothing makes sense. So, Spencer Pratt guy, his house burns down. He and his children are thankfully unhurt by the fire. But then he learns this, and we all kind of learned this right after the fire happened, was that the firefighters really struggled to put the fire out. And that was because they pulled up to the fire hydrants and there was no water in them. So why was there no water in them? Well, there were a lot of reasons, and some of it was because they were having pressure issues. They weren't the fire suppression system wasn't meant to have the entire town's lines used at once. But a big part of it was they would pull up to the fire hydrants and there'd be no water in them, and that's because in part, there was a water reservoir for the town that held 117 million gallons just for this kind of thing, and it was empty because the cover on it had been damaged. So, due to local regulations, they had to empty it, which is really a stupid regulation. Like, I understand for drinking water why you want your reservoir covered, but it seems like pretty basic fire safety that if you can't cover the reservoir and maybe it's not safe for drinking, it should still be there for emergencies for firefighting. But, whatever. It's just splitting hairs here or there. So in comes Karen Bass as mayor. This whole thing happens. I want to say, I want to look this up and fact check this here, but I think she either promoted like the fire department, LA Fire Department's first like female chief or first like trans chief or something she was so proud of. And just like, oh, okay, I'm glad that's what we're really worried about here is intersectionality instead of worried about whether someone's actually competent at their job. But that's who Karen Bass is. And a little bit more on her. So she promised in her campaign for mayor the first time that if she won, she wouldn't be taking any fancy trips abroad. She wouldn't be spending all her time in Washington, D.C. She would spend it making LA better. So when this fire popped off, where was she? Well, of course, she was in Ghana because, duh, we all go to Ghana after we win our mayoral elections. She wanted to see President John Mahama inaugurated as the president of Ghana. Real important stuff here. So, as tens of thousands of people were losing their homes, her city's on fire. She's literally out in Africa doing her thing, hanging out. There's some interesting parallels here. Something about fiddling while Rome burns, but she's in Ghana while LA burns. It's all kind of the same stuff, right? History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And so Mayor Bass, again, and this lady was an idiot before she was even elected mayor. In 2016, she used to be a congresswoman in California, and she was known for having a few interesting comments. When Fidel Castro died, she praised him because, of course, she did. Remember, she's a socialist at heart. She couldn't really stand there and tell you, the intricacies of John Maynard Keynes' version of economics, but she could tell you that President Castro, as she would call him, the dictator of Cuba, brutal communist dictator, she called him Comandante in Jefe, which is, a really a term of endearment for a brutal dictator. She was also known for praising Scientology, which, fun fact, is the mandated religion of this program. We love Scientology here. We're kidding, of course. Please don't go drag us all over the internet for praising Scientology. We're not Karen Bass. If you want to drag somebody for praising Scientology, you can go look up Karen Bass's comments and see all the dumb shit she used to say, because nothing really says LA like I love Scientology and burning the whole goddamn place down. Actually, there is something a little more LA, and that's the homeless situation and one of Spencer Pratt's biggest issues he's been running on. And aside, he got into the race again just because his house burned down and he's not going to be allowed to rebuild it, and I would say a large part. It's just so many things coming together. It's hard to synthesize it all. You've got the you've got all of California, where Gavin Newsom, is not allowing the wildland firefighters to go through and do the prescribed burns that they should, because the Sierra Club's going to get mad that you're disturbing the environment. So then you have this tinderbox surrounding this uh, city, Pacific Palisades, that California won't let them do anything about. The local fire department can't get any water because they're underfunded and their reservoirs are empty. Then on top of that, the mayor's out in Ghana celebrating a new president being inaugurated there, like anyone actually gives a shit about who the corrupt president of Ghana is. And of course, this mayor's, somebody who loves Fidel Castro and Scientology and all this garbage. So all this just leftist crap just kind of comes together and results in the entire city being burned down. And that really pisses Spencer off. And then on top of it all, they won't let him rebuild. So you put all that aside and you're like, okay, that's bad. But at least it's still LA. At least we still get to walk down the street at night and 43,000 people get to be sleeping right there on the sidewalk every night. That's how many people are sleeping on the streets in LA. So you would think, well, maybe LA just doesn't have the money to, spend on the homelessness program. Maybe there's some libertarian hellhole who won't spend any money to help these people or something like that. No, of course not. They spend $1 billion on homelessness annually just in LA. And in case you don't have a calculator, that's about $23,000 per homeless person per year. So you would think, okay, well, they spend like all their money on solving this homeless problem and they just can't figure it out. No, actually, Karen Bass is also spending $3.3 billion on a train that goes 1 or 2 miles around LAX. So they've got money coming out of their ears, yet they can't balance their budget. None of their problems are being solved. And it's not shocking why somebody like Spencer Pratt, who stands up and says this is all bullshit, is getting pretty popular. At least popular enough to win in the primary so far 30% in LA as a Republican. So you tell me. I don't know. I don't know. It's shocking that somebody doesn't want Karen Bass to be reelected. What's actually the most shocking, actually, and CNBC just called this, Karen Bass for sure is moving on to the general election. She's still technically, we're still at 50% of the precincts reporting. She could technically win this thing outright in California if you win your primary, which is not partisan. Everybody runs in the same primary. But if you get 50% or more, you win the whole dang thing. You don't even have to go into November and run. Technically could still happen, but doesn't look like it's going to. Looks like Spencer Pratt will be running off against Karen Bass. The crazy thing to me is after all that, 36% of people are still voting for Karen Bass. And then there's another 20% voting for this Ramon lady who's a self-avowed socialist, who's even a bigger lefty than Bass. So admittedly, there are a lot of people watching this who are probably saying, yeah, Spencer Pratt, he's going to make it out of the primary and he's going to go into the general election. But Karen Bass won more of the vote than him. And then there's another 20% coming that went to another socialist. Those people aren't going to vote for Spencer Pratt. And that might be true. But we get to see another 5 months of Spencer Pratt just tearing Karen Bass apart. And Karen Bass has really struggled just in the last couple months. She has lost almost 20% of her support just in the last few months. And about half of those people went to Ramon, the other half went to Spencer Pratt. But that tells you Pratt can peel some of these people away because, when it comes down to it, even the communists don't like having 43,000 people sleep on their streets every night. I would hope they allow it and they put up with it. But you would hope that they would say, okay, look, maybe this Spencer Pratt guy, yes, he's got an R by his name, but anything's better than Karen Bass. Like, no one could be worse than Karen Bass at being mayor. At least on the West Coast, we haven't seen a mayor as bad as her. This chick in Seattle's might gonna be able to give her a run for her money, but man, Karen Bass is gotta be one of the worst mayors the West Coast has seen. Probably the worst mayor LA's ever seen. Maybe some history buff could come up and make an argument for somebody else, but man, she's bad. I mean, she is just really, really bad. And people that support her will make this argument, and this is awesome. This came from a CNN article. Okay. So when we ask who's supporting Karen Bass still, CNN has to go find somebody who can say, we need somebody that can rebut Spencer Pratt. It's not going to be Karen Bass, but we need somebody that's going to be able to do it. So who do they find? They find the director of, and I quote, the Center for Homelessness, Housing, and Health Equity Research at Southern California, a man named Benjamin Henwood. Who else could support the communist Karen Bass but the director of some homelessness and health equity research at a university? Of course. So Spencer Pratt has been talking a lot about housing. And he said, and I'm going to sum it up here for him, that the homelessness problem in LA is a mental health problem and a drug addiction problem. Spencer is saying that the people that are out there on the streets are not just down on their luck or in between jobs. The vast majority of them are drug addicts who don't want help or people in severe mental episodes. And so this Benjamin Henwood comes out and says, no, I quote, clearly issues of addiction and mental illness are significant and important because we know there are higher rates among the homeless people. Yeah, no shit. He then continues, how much of it is driving homelessness? The answer is that it's not. It's not that LA has higher rates of mental illness or addiction than, say, Milwaukee or Detroit, but we have higher rates of homelessness. What's the difference? It's housing affordability, he added. Or Mr. Benjamin Henwood, who probably has a PhD or something, maybe the difference is it's fucking freezing in Detroit or Milwaukee and the weather's 70 degrees year round in LA. So all these people who want to get high all the time and hang out, take advantage of LA and California's generous subsidy programs, decide to move to LA. No one's making the case that living in LA makes you more prone to having drug addiction issues or mental illness issues. It's that all the people that want to live on the fucking streets and do drugs move to LA. Dumbass. How are you going to be the director of homelessness and housing health equity at Southern California and not think of that? Maybe his parents paid $500,000 to get him on the rowing team at University of Southern California so that he could eventually be promoted to that position. Maybe, I don't know. Could have happened. Probably did happen. The University of Spoiled Children's not known for putting out a bunch of geniuses, mostly just entitled rich kids. So it's, of course, I know some nice people that went to University of Southern California. There's apparently a few, I'm told, but this guy, not a genius. And but he's got to take this this stance. He's got to say, well, it's housing affordability. You know why? Because then he can throw his hands up and say, yeah, it's not that big of a deal for me to solve. So this is a problem for somebody else to go solve. Keep giving me money here at the University of Southern California to study health equity research, so that way I don't have to actually go study the health implications of the mental illness and drug addiction. Then they can just take their, millions of dollars they get there at this university to study health equity research and just say, it's a housing problem, it's affordability. And the problem is that this Benjamin guy is not completely wrong in that it was pre-COVID. The average house in LA was going for $670,000. Now the average home price sits at just under $1 million. So it's not like LA is actually affordable or something. But if you go down Skid Row and you see these people living in tents, okay, and they're doing drugs, they got heroin needles hanging out of their arms or something. It's not like they're just, they did have $150,000 saved for a down payment, but then housing prices went up and, now they're 20 grand short of that payment they needed. So they decided to leave their 200 grand in the bank and go to heroin or something. That's not what's going on here. Housing prices are out of control, but what that's doing is pushing younger people to live with their parents longer, move out of the city, etc. These people living on the streets are not from LA. They come from all over to be drug addicts here because we have really loose drug laws. Again, there's millions and well, actually, we just $1 billion is pumped into benefits for homeless people just in LA. California adds a lot more on top of that. So LA is a great place to be homeless. I mean, honestly, if you're the type of person who likes heroin and likes great weather and likes getting free money, why would you ever go anywhere except LA? I mean, it is the number one place for homelessness in the country, and it's easy to tell why. The Milwaukee is not the number one place for homelessness in the country for pretty obvious reasons. It gets freezing ass cold there, and they don't put up with it. Same with Detroit. You don't see a lot of homeless people sleeping on the streets in January in Detroit. Has nothing to do with natural mental health rates of the people that live in either one of those cities. But if you ask the geniuses at USC, they will tell you that it's just the housing afford. The heroin addict would be able to afford housing if it was just, the average price of homes was a couple $100,000 cheaper. It's nonsense, of course. And it's sad that we pay people like Benjamin Henwood so much money to come up with complete bullshit like that. And only a dying news organization like CNN would even think that's a fit to print. It's CNN. What else are you gonna expect from people like this? So we're going to continue to follow this. We may do another episode here on Karen Bass and all the terrible things she's done to LA. Not that she found it in a great state, but man, has it really struggled under her. And LA is a great city, by the way. And I don't mean any of this to be against the people of LA. Like LA is an awesome place. Or a historic place. I don't know if I'd want to say an awesome place. Nobody walking around downtown LA or near Skid Row thinks it's an awesome place anymore, but it was a really awesome place. There are still really awesome parts. And I really hope they decide to get their shit together and elect Spencer Pratt because I'd love to visit there more often. Uh, it really is a storied place, not just for the United States and California, but in the world. I mean, some of the best, all the best, art, visual art comes from LA. And we don't need 40,000 heroin addicts living on the street to make great art, especially, and we should comment here too, that the film industry in LA is dying. You can't get a permit to film anywhere, so most of the studios are moving out of LA. They're going out to Georgia. They're going out to Texas, places that are going to give them better tax structures, actually give them permits to film, etc. So that's sad too that the industry is really going downhill. You can only imagine what it's like. Your house burns down. You know it's the mayor could have prevented it. You don't really have your shot at the governor, but you know he could have prevented all this too. They're just completely neglect their cities. They don't give a damn. They'd rather be out in Africa celebrating the new president there, but they do nothing. They let their cities burn. They're socialists, and that's what they do, man. And Spencer's standing up to him. Good for him. He gets 5 more months to just take a sledgehammer to Karen Bass's record. And I hope it goes all over social media, X, TikTok, everything. I hope he just takes the opportunity to, even if the odds of him winning are low, to just really put a spotlight on how corrupt and incompetent Karen Bass and the LA leadership team all is. I hope the best for him, man. Good for him for standing up and doing what he needs to do for his community. We're going to continue to talk about LA, and we'll throw a couple updates on here when this race has been called, and we know for sure that Spencer Pratt will be advancing to the general. All right, we're out. Thanks, guys.